Hi, this is Norm Lewis, and you are listening to The Art of Kindness.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to The Art of Kindness, where we have compassionate conversations with artists from all areas of the entertainment industry who are using their voice to spread joy and make this big spinning planet in the universe a better place to be. I'm Robert Peterpaul, and I'm so glad you're here. Hi, beautiful people. Thank you for tuning back in. For today's episode, we are joined by a friend whose heart shines just as brightly as his incredible talent and his smile, which you can see stretched across a sign at the Orlando airport. Just saying, I've seen it. Today's guest is Norm Lewis. Norm Lewis is a Tony, Emmy, and SAG Award nominee who has graced the Broadway stage in 16 different shows. From the Gershwins' Porgy and Bess and Les Miserables, to Disney's The Little Mermaid, to his groundbreaking turn as the first Black Phantom in The Phantom of the Opera on Broadway. Norm's also left his mark on screen with Spike Lee's Da 5 Bloods, FX's Pose, Jesus Christ Superstar Live in concert on NBC, and of course, opposite Kerry Washington in Scandal. Norm's latest turn is in the powerful revival of Ceremonies in Dark Old Men at Theater at St. Clement's, bringing new life to this 1950s classic. You absolutely don't want to miss this limited engagement, so make sure to grab your tickets at the link in our show notes. What truly makes Norm a star, I think anyway, is the kindness he radiates in everything he does. As a founding member of Black Theater United, he uses his luscious voice to make real change and lift others up. And that's certainly something we touch on in this conversation. Head to our social media pages and YouTube channel to see visuals from this chat. I've interacted with Norm at several events over the years, and he's always such a class act. Now, without further ado, here's my conversation with someone who defies the norm. The magical Norm Lewis. I'm just thrilled to see you. I think you're truly one of a kind. I don't need to tell you that. I'm such a big fan of not only your glorious talents, but just the person that you seem to be when you navigate this industry. Nobody has a bad story about you. So thank you for just being a great role model, first of all.
You haven't met them yet. That's the only thing.
Actually, we have a surprise caller. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, my God. How funny.
Well, first of all, now that I kind of bombarded you with some compliments, the first question I always like to ask folks such as yourself that have achieved this high status in the industry is, how are you at accepting compliments?
Wow, you know what? I've never been asked that question before. That's a really good question. I'm going to steal that, actually. Thank you.
Oh, take it.
Of course, you want to hear good things about yourself. But then you also weigh the good with the bad in the sense of, is it genuine? Is it, where are they coming from? What kind of place they're coming from? So, I'm good at it, but then I'm also bad at it. Sometimes, when it becomes overwhelming, it can be a little too much, but if someone immediately says something about you, like after a show or whatever, it means something. It means a lot. And I think I can feel that spirit of where it comes from.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And we're all learning, right? It's interesting because we want them. We talk about that a lot on here. But then once we get them, sometimes it's a tricky dance of wanting to be humble and then realizing it's also about the other person giving it to you. It's their moment too. So
right.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And please take the question. I just asked, 10%, you just send it my way.
Absolutely.
Well, Norm, to have some context for today, I would love to know, what is your definition of kindness?
My definition of kindness is just being aware of other people, opening a door for someone, whether, it doesn't have to be like a gentlemanly thing in the sense of opening it for a female. You can open it for someone. Doesn't matter. Smiling at someone. I love, love, love to, sometimes I think I intimidate or scare people, but
Same.
yeah. And I just say, hello, how are you? Good morning, things like
Yeah.
that. Or I'll even compliment, like yesterday I was walking and I saw these two women who had these unusual coats on. And I said, as soon as we were waiting for the light to change, I just turned and I said, excuse me, but your coats are amazing. And
Hmm.
it just brought a smile to their face. So hopefully that will resonate and translate to them and brighten their day in some way.
Yeah, I think it has a ripple effect, right? Because then they're more likely to maybe compliment somebody else's jacket as they go walk on their journey.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, I love that. I'm wondering, going back for a second during your childhood in Florida, I believe,
Yes.
which it makes sense because I believe I've seen your beautiful face at the Florida Orlando airport
Yeah.
many times, and I'm like, that's Norman Lewis, so cool. Represent. How did you experience kindness growing up? Do you have any memories of that?
Yeah, both my parents were known for their kindness and my mom loved, for some reason, she gravitated towards a lot of elderly people and she loved helping a lot of elderly people who were in need, like needing a ride somewhere, going to the grocery store, shopping, things like that for clothing. And there was this one woman, Mrs. Durant. I can't think of her first name, but we called her Mrs. Durant. It could have been Durant, it could have been Durant or whatever, but we called her Durant.
I like that.
And yeah, mom became really good friends with her. And then there were a few other people who needed help that she did. And my dad, being like, he was a very charismatic, gregarious guy that was loved to be in the spotlight. So he was the chairman of the deacon board at church,
Oh.
and his dad was a preacher. So he showed his kindness to when he would see some of our friends about town, he would acknowledge them and say, "You're Norm's friend, aren't you?" He wouldn't remember names at all, but he would say, Yeah, I remember when you came over to the house. How you doing?" Things like that. So I think that kind of was instilled in me.
I love that. Seeing people.
Yeah,
We're all little Muppets, humans walking this earth. We got to see each
exactly.
other. I think that's special. I also found it so cool as I was doing some research here that you worked in the advertising department at the Orlando Sentinel before pursuing performance. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, I started out in the production office. Basically, it was just when I got the job, I was still in college, and it was the section where there's these big rotating machines where you just put the newspaper in there, and the coupons or the different sections would fall into it after it went rotating, and then it would fall out, and you would stack them, and then they would be delivered. So I worked there for a little bit. Then I saw an opening in the marketing department, and I did that for about 6 months. And then, being that I had to do a lot of deliveries around the company, one of the people in the advertising department said, "Hey, we have an opening coming up. Would you like to come in and interview?" And that's what happened. And so that was going to be my career. I worked in telephone sales for a little bit, did a little bit of telemarketing, and I did a little tiny bit of outside sales before I left to go and on this journey.
Wow. And, of course, we're going to get to the new show you're here to talk about today, but I just feel like while I have you, I got to pick your brain about many things. So buckle up.
Sure,
But
sure.
it makes me wonder, starting in advertising, that's part of being a performer is like going out there and kind of selling the show you're in. And then when like you, who's very acclaimed, you're in sort of an awards circuit. There's a lot of that. Do you feel like that taught you anything as you went on to be in those positions? Do you kind of like
Absolutely.
hark back to those times? Yeah.
Yeah, because I studied business in college, and then once I got into like the advertising department, it kind of actually just opened up a lot of what I had studied before, and it was mostly about. It's not about the product; it's about the relationship that you have with that person that you're selling to, and so you had to remember names, you had to remember like their grandma or like their kid's name or the dog's name because that actually helped in making it more personal, and then you got to the product. And
Yeah.
so, same thing in acting. It's about the material and all that kind of stuff, but it is mostly about the relationship that you have on stage with the other actor, and trying to boost them up, and then you try to sell to the audience.
Yeah. And to casting directors too, right? It's sort of
Right.
about treating it as a people first scenario versus going in there and maybe trying to do your shtick and like kind of force it down their throats. So I think that's a smart reminder all around.
Yeah.
As you started your career in the arts, is there, I think I've heard you speak about someone specific here. So I'm trying to guess if it's going to be that person, but is there one act of kindness you can pinpoint as kind of changing your trajectory? I'm sure you've had so many.
Gosh, it's hard to pick one because
These are big morning questions I'm throwing at
yeah,
you.
truly. Ugh. No, but there have been several instances where people, my colleagues or my people who have hired me, or just random people that were fans that were very kind. I mean, I got a lot of gifts from people, being when they came to see a show or something like that, which was very nice. They didn't have to do that, but cookies or some like there was a pillow that was made that I got that was a Phantom of the Opera, and the mask was on the pillow, and
Cool.
so yeah. Gosh, this is a hard question to answer because there've been such a mix of different ways of people being kind to me. Uh,
Hmm.
let's come back to that. I'll have to
We
think.
can. Well, it's interesting because you kind of walked me down the road of another question I had for you, which was, receiving that kindness from fans.
Mhm.
And like if there was one interaction that really stood out to you. I mean, you mentioned this beautiful pillow gift that you received, but is there anything else that comes to mind there?
Well, I remember when I was doing Miss Saigon, so it was my first lead on Broadway, and you do 8 shows a week. Sometimes you might not have the best show, what you consider the best show.
Hmm.
And I was having like a bad day. I just, it just was, I didn't quite either hit the note or I didn't make that acting choice correctly or whatever. And
Hmm.
I didn't want to meet anybody. I just was in a bad mood and I waited until I thought the crowd would be gone, at the stage door. And so I had some other things I did in my dressing room for about an hour, some computer things or whatever, being on the phone. So it was like time to go. And then I walk out and there's this little kid who was like 6 years old with his mom
Hmm.
and it's in the cold and I'm like, "Oh, did you wait here the whole time?" She's like, "Yeah, we wanted to meet you. We thought you were so good in the show." And the little 6-year-old kid said, "You are the best actor I've ever seen." And I'm like, "Oh
Oh.
my God." And having, not being that I thought I had a really good show, it just meant so much. And especially that this kid was an African American kid. So
Hmm.
for him to see me that way, I just like, that was so beautiful. And so obviously I still remember that. There've
Yeah.
been, God, yeah, that's the one.
That's the
That's the one
power. No, that's
that's
the
the one I'll
power of
pick.
kindness. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's like how that one statement just changed your whole mood, all of
Yeah.
your energy. I feel that way. Even like self-taping now, which I don't think you probably have to do
Oh no, I
as
do.
much as others. But yeah, even just having someone else come in, a loved one or the reader or whoever, if you're reading with your partner, whoever it is, say something to you to kind of like snap you out of like your spiral. It's so powerful. So I love that example.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had that a lot at the stage door, and to kind of cover your remarkable career here in a short amount of time and bring us to where you are now. We got a
Right.
lot of ground to run through. We're going to play a little game
Okay.
called Curtain Call for Kindness.
Okay.
I
Okay. I
first
love
played it with Kate Baldwin, and she made up a little theme song, so I'm going to insert that right here.
It's curtains up kindness, leave your jazz hands at home.
We're going to kind of fly over your beautiful career, mostly Broadway credits, but with some TV ones too.
it. Okay.
And then I would love if you could just quickly say the kindest memory that comes to mind, the kindest aspect. It can be a person, it can be, a quick tangent, whatever you want it to be. Does that make sense?
Yes, sure.
Okay. And we'll keep it fast.
Okay.
You have 16 Broadway shows. We're not going to be able to touch on all of them. But let's start with your first one, Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy was an amazing. Wow. Well, obviously first Broadway show, like you made it to Broadway. Come on.
Yeah.
And you have the you now if you've made it to Broadway, you can now say Broadway. Uh, and to this day, our cast, that was 31 years ago. And our cast is still very much in touch with each other. We still love each
Hmm.
other. It was a lot of people's debuts. Sherry Renee Scott, Michael Cerveris. God, I'm trying to think of the rest of this cast, but the cast was fantastic. And
Wow.
so we all just kind of grew together as kids, if you will, and as ensemble members, and made this show as special as it could be. And
Hmm.
So I would say the kindest act of that show was the way that Pete Townsend, who was this superstar, greeted us, treated us like, we were on his level.
Mm.
Here we are, very excited about this piece and everything, but he really treated us very kindly, and we did some things with him outside of the realm of just being on stage and learning his music, and so yeah, yeah,
Oh, beautiful.
yeah.
High score on the pinball machine over there for that answer. I think let's move to, I'm interested in Chicago because you came in as a replacement. So anything come to mind there?
Yeah, I got to be on stage with Gretchen Mol for about a week or week and a half, 2 weeks, and she was my Roxy. She was sweet, she was this movie star, and here I am,
Yeah.
this guy that just is filling in this slot, and she was very, very sweet. I would say though that that entire ensemble was very kind, and like if you ever forget your lines, because you only have like a week and a half to 2 weeks to learn the show. So if you ever forget your lines, just look at us. We'll mouth it to you. We'll give you the line, or if
They're like
you're out of place,
razzle
wait, razzle
dazzle.
dazzle,
You're
right?
like, oh.
And then they would push you into place, because they've been through it. They've had several stunt cast people, and I won't mention certain names, but they actually had one guy who, because there are speeches in the show that are very similar, who actually dropped, like, went to the second act speech.
Oh no.
Yeah, and they had to somehow work it out where it worked for the show, because basically Mary Sunshine never got introduced.
Oh no.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
That's wild.
yeah, yeah.
Ah, comprehensible. What is it? No, I don't know. That's insane. Oh my gosh, I love that story. Okay, I'm gonna fly through. I'm gonna skip over some of them just for time, but I think Dream Girls would be a nice one to stop at.
Wow. Ooh, which one? I got to work with
Oh,
Lilius and
true. Yes,
Frenchie and Jennifer Holliday, so I've done it 3 times.
that's
Uh,
wild.
oh man, the kindest. Well, first of all, here I am on stage doing this concert version that Seth Rudetsky put together with, at the time, was called the Actors Fund. Now it's the Entertainment Fund, and working with Lilius White, Heather Headley, and Audra McDonald. Come on, come on, come on!
Insane.
And it was a short amount of time putting it together. Everybody was like on one accord and wanted to make this right, and it was right
Mm,
after 9/11, which actually we needed. It was like 2 weeks after 9/11 happened, so we needed that audience was hungry for some entertainment and some good
mm,
news. Working with Frenchie Davis was great at Pittsburgh CLO. And then to work with the Queen herself, the show that it's known for, Jennifer Holliday, in Atlanta, Georgia. Again, short amount of time to put it all together, but she was so kind and telling us backstories of the original, and not
mm.
directing us, but letting us know what certain moments meant, and it really, really helped. So we
Oh,
covered all
thank.
three. There we go.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. You're good at this game. Okay, we're gonna pop really quickly into a TV credit, which is
Okay.
Scandal. I think which you
Scandal.
left a big mark on.
Yeah, yeah. I would say the kindest moment for me was the first day that I was on set, and Kerry Washington walked me to set. And what I learned about her was how, not only how beautiful, aesthetically, yeah, of course, the outside
Hmm.
is fantastic, but the inside is so beautiful as well. And
Hmm.
what it was a lesson learned, because she was the leader of that set and that show. She knew everyone's name. There were
Hmm.
about 20, 25 people on set, cameramen, grip, other actors, all that, but she knew everyone's name.
Hmm.
And that was very important. And in fact, so much so, I think she even said, "Hey, how's your dog Rover?" I mean, little things like that means a lot to someone. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. I just talked with Tony Goldwyn, and he said
oh,
similar things about her.
yeah,
Yeah. So I'll just drop that name on the floor, baby girl.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. I
Anyway.
don't, I don't like Tony Goldwyn. He stole my woman, so it's fine.
Oh, true. Yeah, I'm so sorry to bring that up. We should go. This is actually not the art of kindness. It's the art of a throuple love triangle.
Exactly.
Okay. Les Mis.
Les Miserables.
Les
So
Miserables.
I got
Yeah.
a chance to do the show in 2006 on Broadway for 6 months. Again, it's about the ensemble. I think what it is like we're such a team. We're a team that is playing this amazing game on stage, and we need each other. And there was, especially at that time, everybody knew the show, everybody knew the words, everybody. So you can't screw up. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So There was a time though that Alex Gimignani, who was playing Valjean, he and I were doing the fight scene, and for some reason, I went up, and and I couldn't remember my words, but I kept moving my mouth like I did know the words. And he looked at me because and then he kept repeating what he was saying, and I was blaming it on the mic.
Oh, nice.
The
That's
mic went
good.
out, but that wasn't true. I just forgot the words, and it just was the funniest thing in the world. But
I thought you were going to say it was a Singing in the Rain situation where all of a sudden someone started filling in for you.
yeah, can you imagine? But no, it was. I'm just trying to, as far as kindness, I just think that we all just got along and we just were rooting for each other. There was a young lady who was an ensemble member, swing, and she went on for Cosette, and it was her first time ever doing it. And her family lives not far from here, somewhere in Long Island. There were about 50 people in the audience for her. It was the first time ever that I know of, ever, that Cosette got entrance applause.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. We got to have support.
Yeah.
You know, you've been doing so well at this game that I'm going to throw you a little bit of a boon here
Okay.
and ask you a specific question about this next show, which is Porgy and Bess.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, you got a Tony nomination. Ka-choo, ka-choo. How does that change things as far as how you treat yourself with kindness? Does that affect it at all to get that sort of stamp of approval in a way?
Well, it's funny because I learned a lot from Audra. We had been friends for a long time. The only thing we've ever done together was that Dreamgirls in 2001. Jumping to 2011, 2012, and playing so close with her, so intently with her, and intensely with her. I learned so much about this person who we have hailed as this, like celebrated actress on Broadway, that she gives so much to you that you really have to give back to her. And I said to myself after the first rehearsal, I said, I better step my game up. I really have got to because I'll be left behind. You'll be left behind in the dust. And so we actually fell in love with each other, on stage, and needed each other so much. And when one of us was off, it was interesting because we were like, it felt, the other actors, the understudies were fantastic. They were great. But there was just a bond that me and Audra had that you just can't, I don't know, you can't repeat.
That's a phenomenal way to put it, falling in love with each other on stage as performers, because you sort of do have to do that. You have to need each other. You have to be in sync. Otherwise, it's missing that extra little, dash of magic. I think for time, I'm going to skip to one more, Chicken and Biscuits.
You got plenty of time.
Oh, you're so kind. Chicken and Biscuits, which Erica Hart, I got to give you a shout out. I love you, my friend, who was the casting director for that show.
Yeah.
So, what comes to mind there?
Well, it was my first play. So I had never been in a play professionally on Broadway, and it was my first play. So I was excited about that. Coming out of the pandemic was, that was such a relief. But I mean, we were still very careful, and we had people there to make sure that we were masked backstage and all that stuff. But this ensemble, again, I go back to this team that we have, but working with Jalen, our director, and Douglas Lyons, who wrote the show, we just wanted to make it the best we could be. And it turned out to be, and also being told through the eyes of a culture that I understood, and telling that story, but it was very universal. Everybody was making sure that we could, because we had a short amount of time to get it on stage. There was a lot of pressure because of it being a show coming out of the pandemic. We were very cohesive in making sure that the show did well, even though we didn't run that long, because of financial reasons and COVID and everything.
But it made waves. I mean, I'm still hearing that name today. It won, I think, an Artios Award. I know. I mean, it's quite an acclaimed show in itself, and I think it's going to have another life besides just making people hungry when they say the title, because I am hungry now, but I'm always hungry. As we kind of look back on all this that we just flew over, I wonder, this is a bit of a corny question, but I'm a cornball, cast me and shuck. I wonder if there's a message of kindness you would send to Little Norm when he was first starting out. Is there anything you wish he knew, which might help young artists listening?
Yeah, you don't have to be afraid. you don't have to be afraid. Just truly, truly step into who you are. Truly, truly try things, and and don't be afraid to fail,
Hmm.
because you'll learn from that. I wish I knew that early on. So it's yeah, little Norm. If you're out there in another dimension, don't be afraid. Just don't be afraid. Just go for it.
And now entering the Zoom, Little Norm. That
Yeah,
would be
little
crazy.
Norm.
Imagine if I did that. That'd be wild. This isn't even about Back to the Future, the musical.
Right?
As I mentioned, we now are so blessed to have you returning to the stage with the classic play, Ceremonies in Dark Old Men, which has not been seen in New York City, I think, in nearly 4 decades, is it?
Yeah.
This limited engagement is going to be such a special production. I just wonder if you could first speak to what drew you to this story in these times.
Well, first of all, funny enough, I'd never heard of it before. And it was when it was presented to me, I said, "Well, okay, let me read it." And then when I was told the history of it, like the Negro Ensemble, who had been in it before, Denzel Washington,
Hmm.
and all these people who had this legacy, I was like, "Okay, I have to do this piece." Being
It
that
was
I had,
nominated for a Pulitzer, right?
yeah, it
Yeah.
was yes, it was the runner-up to being to actually getting a Pulitzer, and it just, written by Lonnie Elder, and again, like I said, the legacy of who was attached to this. I wanted to be a part of that, and knowing who was directing, Clinton, my friend Clinton, it was just a yes, and also knowing that I had been part of the Negro Ensemble's legacy, doing a soldier's play on tour. I said yes, I have to be part of this, what they have done over the years.
It's so beautiful. Well, you mentioned working with Clinton here, and this legendary director. We don't have to name his credits.
Right.
And those incredible companies that have been behind this production. Have there been any kind of standout moments of kindness so far in the rehearsal room?
Oh, absolutely. I will say Clinton has set the tone. He was like, listen, I have been a part of this. I've known this show for so many years, but I want you to bring what you can bring to it. And I want
Hmm.
you to, he said, the best directors are the ones who listen to the actors and other ideas. And then we can all put it together. But I would say Clinton has been that piece of kindness, if you will, that
Hmm.
has allowed us to explore. And we're still exploring. We still have a ways to go, but it has been a wonderful journey. And because I'm a man of a certain age, I want to make sure that I say the names of the people who were in the show: Felicia Boswell, Morgan Green, James Foster Jr., Jeremiah Packer, and Calvin M. Thompson and Bryce Michael Wood. All these people are just amazing, for one,
Hmm.
and super kind, just to kind of keep the theme of this, but eager and willing to make this piece come alive again.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah, well, looking at those people that you just named who are making this piece come to life with you, I wonder, as someone who's sort of, not to bring the hierarchy in here, but number one on a call sheet or a sign-in sheet here, how do you think kindness shapes the way you lead a cast? Is that something you think about? I'm sure you're naturally just kind from what I hear, but
I'm a good guy. I will say that. That's the one thing I can say about myself without
I
bragging.
like that, Norm.
I'm a
Yeah.
good guy. But I think with, yes, obviously there is that name recognition that, thank God somebody wants to see me, Norm Lewis, being in a show.
Well,
But
you're in the Florida airport, okay?
but it's been a nice thing where I will definitely lead with kindness, but I think that people will take up that mantle and keep going themselves, and just we're all on an equal plane. I want people to know that we're all, I'm not coming in there trying to be something other than what I am, because I just luckily I have a resume that has been wonderful and a blessing, but we now have to focus on this moment, and that's where we're coming from.
I think that's such an amazing perspective. And unfortunately, I feel like it's not always the case. For whatever reason, maybe people aren't necessarily purposely being unkind, but they're stuck in their heads. They don't know how to be a proper leader. In this industry, unfortunately, we all have those moments where
Mm.
we're met with unkindness. How do you handle those? Like, how do you rise above it as a leader now yourself without sort of losing your own sense of kindness? Tense moments, whether it's on a set or in rehearsal where there's that unkindness, because we don't always stop for the kind moments of
Right.
Norm Lewis just performed and it was amazing in the rehearsal room. We just move on because we know that, but we stop when something goes wrong and sometimes it's not handled in the best way. How do you handle those situations, I
Well,
guess?
you stop and you try to assess the moment. You breathe. I have been in certain situations like that, and yes, you could go a certain route and just retaliate or defend or whatever. But I think when you know you have to work together, when you know that you need that other person or people, you try to bridge a gap that can be a compromise. Say, listen, okay, what do you need? What do you need? Let's talk about this. And in fact, I'm going to digress just a little bit because that's kind of what we did with Black Theater United. I'm a major part of. It
Hmm.
was a moment in time where there were some things that were happening and people were very passionate. And we, as Black Theater United, decided to go a certain route because we have connections and relationships with people who have power, who are in charge. And we wanted to have a conversation and say, listen, what can we do to have an understanding and an allyship? And I think that because the summit that we had with the making the New Deal on Broadway was tense, intense,
Hmm.
intentional, and there was a lot of things going
That's
on.
cool.
People said things that hurt. People said things that they probably didn't understand. And once it was out there, we were like, okay, let's have a conversation about that. What does that mean? There's a deeper meaning to certain things. So I think
Hmm.
I said all that to
I'm
say
glad you did. First of all, intense. No, wait. Oh, sorry. Okay, you said
tense,
tense, intense,
intense, and
intentional.
intentional.
Did you make that
And
up?
no, I literally it just came out of my head. I don't know
That's
why.
going on T-shirts.
It,
Okay, 10.99. I
it
love
makes me
that.
sound more intelligent than I am, but it just was one of those things where, to get like back to your original question, when it's in the room and there's a, moment like that, when you look at the fullness of it, we're trying to we're acting. We're just acting.
Hmm.
We're just acting. And, we're not doing brain surgery. We're not launching a rocket into space. Right now, we're just acting. And
Hmm.
we'll find that come to a certain point where that moment will maybe hit someone in the audience and change their lives. Yes. But in this moment, we got to get the foundation of it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. So it's about talking it out.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That rhymed too. It's about talking it out. That's
Yes.
great. You're just dropping gems left and right. My nanny was saying the other day, you got to bake the cake before you ice it. And I think that's sort of speaking to what you just said. It's just wild because we've all maybe had those rehearsal processes. By the time we hit opening, we feel like we have a family. And then there's the other ones where you get to opening and you're like, I don't know these people, but now I know we're about to know each other because we're going to be in the middle of the run and all
Right.
the cuckoo-ness of the rehearsal process is gone. So
Right.
it makes all the difference when you can just start off in sort of a human place and
Right.
remember that make-believe aspect. I'm really glad you mentioned BTU. I was going to ask you about that, but you just shared a little bit about there. Can you actually tell everybody at home how they can join in and support the amazing mission you have?
Yes, go to blacktheaterunited.com, and we spell theater very fancy with the R in front of the E. So
Oh yes, it's
blacktheaterunited.com.
the only way.
It's the only way. Yes, because we're bougie. No, no, but it's a fantastic group of people who came together after the George Floyd incident. There were a lineage of people who had been killed, Breonna Taylor and some other, and George Floyd actually was the straw, and it was during the pandemic, and just we had to come together because we were hearing voices, especially younger voices that were looking at us, us older actors saying, well, listen, this is what happened. This is what happened to me in this industry. And I need to talk about it. I need to tell somebody about
Mm,
it. If you remember that time, there were a lot of things that came out in social media, in the newspapers, things like
yeah.
that. about experiences that people have had. And so we knew we had to rely on our resources in order to have a conversation. And that summit that I mentioned earlier, where we created the New Deal, was a 6-month process. And we had a facilitator who knows diversity, equity, and inclusion, is an expert in all of that, which is not a bad word. DEI is not a bad word, the way that
Thank
people
you.
are using it right now.
Mm.
Anyway,
Speak, come on.
yes, exactly. But it was, we brought together theater owners, we brought together producers, we brought together creatives, directors, choreographers, heads of unions, the different unions that we have in our industry, people who are part of the PR for Broadway and theater. And we had a summit, and we had breakout rooms where we could have major, intense discussions, and then come together with an understanding of allowing people to be at the table. So something as simple as an African American woman who needs her hair done a certain way, and if we need someone who can do it, as opposed to just someone who has a cosmetology degree who may know a little bit about black hair. So it was about those kinds of conversations. That's a very minuscule example, but
Yeah.
there are broader and bigger fish to fry out there. And so we just want a seat at the table. And so that's where it all comes
Yeah.
from.
No, it's incredible. I was just talking to a friend the other day who was sharing that they remember, way back when going into the dressing room and the hair and makeup person was like, "Where's your makeup?" Because they didn't have their specific tones. It was like, you were supposed to bring that. They're like, "What do you mean? You have everybody else's. You can get it the same way I'm going to get it. Like, you can order it." So it's so important what you're doing. And just like every person in an audience that you're touching, you could never see the ripple effect that the work that you've done with BTU and other folks have done has had. I mean, even my college, I saw the theater account there posting people's stories and revealing things that people haven't known. And that's not going to make headlines, but that's the effect it's had across the theater community. So
Right.
thank you on all of our behalves. And as a little thank you to change the vibe here for a second, we're going to play a surprise game if you're down. It's another game. I forgot I played one already. Whoop. This is called the compliment game.
Everyone's beautiful in their own way. It's the compliment game on the AOK. It's the compliment game.
And basically, I reached out to someone in your life for a compliment or a loving statement about you, and I'm going to read it to you, and then you have to guess who said it.
Okay. All right.
And you can ask me yes or no questions. I do have a hint. It's part of this one, so I might leave it out at first.
Okay.
So you won't be totally... Oh, I'm not going to say that word, because that'll be a hint too. I'll say it. Okay.
Yeah, don't say it.
Okay, here we go. Put my reading voice on. There are too many things to love about Norm. His joy, his way he makes everyone feel like the most important person in the room, his generosity. Let me take a second for his generosity. He gave me a gift on my last day in a show we did together, and it was so thoughtful, I was too overwhelmed to even know how to express my thanks, and I even had some therapy on it. To which my therapist said, what Norm did was called kingly giving, which is the highest form of giving there is. To which I say, this part's the hint, but I feel like you already know who it is. Okay, I'll say it then. Coo, 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 daddy, love you always and always.
Oh my God, that's so funny. That's my crazy daughter / lover / really good friend. She calls me daddy all the time, and then we were obviously we were lovers and Phantom of the Opera, so it was kind of an interesting kind of
Different daddy, yeah.
yeah. Miss Sierra Bogus, Mrs. Sierra Bogus DeFrey. Woo! Thank you.
Okay, so what would you say back to Mrs. Sierra Bogus DeFrey? When you look back at working with her, I think it's interesting because she's openly talked about in The Little Mermaid, she was so young and she didn't know how to be a leader. And she's done some fantastic interviews where she's kind of, swum into that stream and talked about it.
You will, yes.
And then you worked with her, of course, again. So yeah, what have you learned from her about kindness?
Well, she comes from a family of kind people. You know, her parents were hippies, and so we got to visit them when we were doing the show out of town in Denver, Colorado, and they are so sweet. So that's ingrained in her and part of her spirit. But yes, she was a very young person who was thrust into this lead role and had so much responsibility, and they were expecting a lot of things from her. And so, but I think she had a foundation of seeing, someone like me who was an OG, who'd been on Broadway and done this route, and also Sherry Renee Scott, and also people who were in the ensemble, Merwin, God rest his soul, Merwin Ford, who had been in so many shows, and so I think she saw, at least experienced who we were, and I think that probably I'm guessing for her, but probably helped her in her trajectory of becoming like, oh, okay, now I can do this. I've seen what they do, so I can do this. And then she left the show and went on to do Love Never Dies in London, and then became that person. Because I talked to so many people who were in her ensemble when I got over there myself. Talked to so many people who just said, "Oh my God, she's the greatest thing in the world." And when you talk about kindness, she really does live that what that meaning is.
Yeah, and she's open too about learning from Wayne Dyer and sort of sharing all these amazing quotes, and I think that's so special. Thank you, Sierra, and I got a shout out to my friend John Tracy Egan, who's just such a wild gem from that show. What a prankster! I did a show with him, and it was bad because I get into bits too, and backstage it was like we were jumping out behind walls, scaring people. I love JT.
Yeah, that sounds like John.
Do you get into that? Yeah, how are you backstage? Are you ever into those pranks, or are you?
Oh God,
not that you have to be. Okay.
No, yeah, as long as I know it's not going to interrupt the person's flow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are so many things that we do on stage that the audience doesn't see, but it just I think it enhances the show actually, because there's that relationship that you have. Again, as long as you don't take away from the text or the music or anything like that. Yeah.
It's called a play. You gotta play. You gotta play in the sandbox.
Yeah, exactly.
You've been so generous with your time, and I think to end our time together, sadly, I would love if, although love never dies and neither does this conversation, so I would love it if you could just share a tangible kindness tip. I think I've asked you this on a red carpet before, but do you have a tangible tip you can share with our listeners for their daily life?
I would say the bottom line when it comes to dealing with other people and being kind to people is just making sure that you see them and listen. And a lot of times you can relate to them, and then there might be something that develops from that. But the number one thing is to see someone.
And it helps you too, right? It actually takes you out of your own head. Yeah. It gives back to you in a way, creates that ripple effect. But thank you so much. I just think you are a class act, Norm, and so kind.
You're too kind.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. What if I wasn't? That would be crazy.
I know, right?
And I'm so grateful to have shared some time together. So thank you. Tell everybody how they can go check out your new show.
Yes. Let me make sure I get this correct. It's the Peccadillo.com. So it's ThePeccadillo.com. That's ThePeccadillo.com. And you can get tickets there. The show, we start previews April 11th and we run until May 18th. We open April 18th and we run until May 18th with a possible extension. But right now we don't know just yet. But that's it. And it's called Ceremonies in Dark Old Men. We're at the theater at St. Clement's. You have to put the T on the end. St. Clement's on 46th Street. And come and have a good old time. This is a beautiful story. Actually, I didn't realize how funny it was. I hesitate to say it's a dramedy, but there's some funny moments along with the drama in the show.
Okay, we need that. I'm excited. I have a feeling it's going to get extended, and I cannot wait to come see it. So thank you, Norm. It was such a privilege to talk to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Likewise.
Until next time, remember,
everything is gonna be A-OK.